I do not think that we have the public's trust right now, and we desperately need to get it and keep it if we're going to expect them to continue opening up their wallets and their hearts.
Now at 5, Katu is on your side, digging deeper into a major budget deficit that could derail efforts to solve the homeless crisis. That crisis has been a stain on our region's reputation. Portland and Multnomah County leaders sat down to talk about the issue today, for the first time since the restructuring of Portland city government. Good evening. Thanks a lot for joining us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
I'm Deborah Knapp. We have team coverage for you tonight. Katu's Right Gasway is breaking down the deficit for us, how we got here, and whose tax dollars are at play.
And Christina Giardinelli learned that deficit will mean fewer shelter options for those on our streets. Christina?
Yeah, Steve and Deb, the Joint Office of Homeless Services is not planning to close any shelters as a result of the budget deficit, but it does say it won't be able to open as many new shelter beds as it had hoped. Right now, 171 new shelter beds that the office had hoped to open by the end of next year are on pause. Portland and Multnomah County leaders meeting together for the first time since the city changed its form of government. Most expressed a renewed resolve to work together, something that hasn't always been smooth in the past.
Because I think we're at the cusp of this truly historic moment, this opportunity to come together, create this singular vision for our communities.
Portland City Council member Candice Avalos says when dealing with a $104 million deficit to homeless services, shared vision is key.
There shouldn't be sides when it comes to this issue. A shortfall, whether at the city or the county level, affects the same community we're all here to serve.
It's a community that some, like Portland City Council member Mitch Green, feel is quickly losing trust in their ability as leaders to spend taxpayer dollars efficiently.
And we desperately need to get it and keep it if we're going to expect them to continue opening up their wallets and their hearts.
One way he proposes gaining that trust is by showing people how much shelters cost per bed per month and why. It's something City Council member Angelita Morillo agrees with.
When I calculate it out per day, per month, it seems to be a little bit over $3,000 or more than that sometimes. And when I think about the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment in Portland being $1,700 a month, it just makes me curious about how we are I'm taking your lead already, about how we should be investing these dollars.
Commissioners and city council members were dismayed at having to scale back on plans for new shelters despite spending hundreds of millions in taxpayer money. Green suggests administrative costs need to be cut instead.
41% of our spending is administrative overhead.
How he suggests cutting those administrative costs coming up at 6 p.m. For now, live in downtown Portland, Christina Giardinelli, Katu News.
Christina, thank you. In all this budget talk, we want to be clear about the players involved. The Joint Office is a partnership between the city and the county. In July, its name will change to the Multnomah County Homeless Services Department. Its funding sources will stay the same. This year, the Joint Office got money from Portland, Multnomah County, the federal and state governments, and the metro-wide supportive housing services tax. About 70% of its budget comes from the tax. Individuals who earn at least $125,000 a year or couples who earn $200,000 pay that tax. Now, a lot of you may wonder how much money the Joint Office gets and how it spends that money.
Well, Katu is on your side tonight, digging into the agency's budget. Katu investigator Wright Gasaway is at the live desk now. And Wright, the Joint Office budget went way up after this metro-wide tax passed back in 2020.
It certainly did. This year, the agency has a total budget of $395 million. Here's a high-level look at how most of that money is spent. $9 million goes straight to county administration. $121 million covers what's called safety off and on the streets. That's mainly shelters and safe rest villages, those tiny home pods. $92 million goes to housing placement and retention. That money covers things like rent payments you just heard about and move-in costs. This is an area the county admits it needs to get way better in. Only 20% of people leaving shelters got into housing in 2024. The goal this year is 41%. $72 million covers supportive housing. The county says it's for people who could not stay in housing without help. For example, people with addiction, disabilities, or mental health issues. Finally, $69 million covers system support, access, and coordination. A little bit vague. The county says that's data, research, policy planning, and stuff like that. There are 35 employees working on this. In total, there are 122 employees in the joint office. The agency-wide personnel cost is about $22 million.
Right before you go here, this is a lot of numbers and a lot of money. Break down for us the expected deficit the county chair is talking about.
Essentially, the county says it needs $420 million next year to continue all that work I just outlined at the same level as this year. However, the county projects it will only get $316 million from those funding sources we told you about. That's where this $104 million shortfall is coming from. It is important to note the joint office does not pay for camp cleanup in Portland. That mostly falls on the city and a separate budget. At the live desk, Right Gazaway, K2 News.
Okay, good information, Right. Thank you for that. As we have reported, the county has asked both the state and Metro for help to close that $104 million deficit.
Metro includes Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties. Here's an example of some of the work Metro does. K2 was there for a groundbreaking ceremony today on a new affordable housing project from both Metro and the city of Portland on the southeast side. The Jade Apartments, located in the Jade District, one of the city's most diverse neighborhoods. In fact, it is Portland's only ethnic enclave.
So about a quarter of the Chinese American community lives just within a few blocks up here. We've also experienced historic underinvestment for decades. You might have just driven up and the road network here is incomplete. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have paved streets in a lot of places. So it's a classic kind of environmental justice concern area.
Organizers say the project is especially meaningful given the attacks and rhetoric around immigrants and declining federal support. The new site will offer 40 limited income homes paired with services including financial, literacy, job training, food pantry and transportation access, and health programs like yoga and a community garden.
Multnomah County says it will need to cut some of its homeless services in the future due to a $104 million deficit in 2026. The county claims the deficit is because Metro's tax is falling short of what it predicted.
Yeah, most years, the revenue from that tax has come in higher than expected. K2's Christina Giardinelli has been digging into these numbers and is live in southeast Portland now. At 5 o'clock, Christina, you had been trying to get the county to break down the deficit for you. Have they given you any answers at all?
Stephen, right, no answers as of yet. What I'm trying to figure out is how they came up with that total of $104 million. The supportive housing services, Metro tax that you mentioned, the budget, the revenue deficit for that amount totals about $56 million over the next 2 years, but that doesn't add up to $104 million. The county has told me that the rest of the deficit comes from less carryover money from previous years and less money from the city and county's general funds, which are both in a deficit, but it has not broken down the deficit amounts from those three other revenue sources. It has also not said why it's relying on volatile funding streams for long-term homeless service programs. County Chair Jessica Vega Pederson says she's asking the state and supportive housing services for more money to fix the deficit.
I do want to be clear that I'm asking for existing resources that have already been raised from taxpayer dollars and do not request any new taxes to be raised. As we have with supporting housing service dollars, we must continue using a successful statewide and regional approach to this work. Multnomah County has 20% of the state's population, but serves more than 40% of the state's homeless population.
Now, Metro says it's looking into the county's request for more money and says its primary goal is providing shelter for people who are homeless. Metro forecasts warn the county that this is a volatile fund and forecasts cannot be relied on to be exact. Now, the reason why this fund is so volatile is because it's a tax on high-income earners, and that relies heavily on things like investors and the dividends that they might earn from one year to the next, as well as selling off stock. Those are both volatile sources. We'll continue trying to get answers to these questions. For now, live in southeast Portland, Christina Giardinelli, K2 News.
Christina, thank you for that.